I watched the bank's silent alarm light up my screen, while my husband posted a champagne toast from an airport lounge he swore he couldn't afford. He hadn't stolen a credit card. He'd tripped a wire. I built a Canary account with money that screams in numbers only investigators understand. 48 hours from now. If I do this right, he won't be boarding a flight. He'll be reading his rights. And I'll be reading my life back to myself without him. Julian always said transparency was overrated. He preferred stories that glimmered curated illusions of success. Spontaneous getaways. The smell of expensive cologne on an ordinary Wednesday. When we met, I mistook his confidence for competence. His secrets for mystery. I built firewalls at work, and none at home. The irony still burns. I work in digital forensics, the quiet corner of cybersecurity where lies are stored as metadata. My days revolve around tracing breaches and reconstructing timelines of betrayal in other people's systems. I used to think I understood patterns. But I missed the one closest to me, the subtle shift in Julian's spending. The late-night laughter muffled behind a locked bathroom door. The hotel loyalty points appearing on statements we never discussed. I told myself it was business. But curiosity is my profession. And once suspicion finds oxygen, it doesn't suffocate easily. The first red flag came disguised as a routine alert. A login from an unfamiliar IP, a city Julian happened to visit for work. A second flag followed a new card added to my joint account. Authorized under my name but registered to a different device. When I confronted him, he smiled like a magician, revealing a harmless trick. "It's probably just a bank error," he said. I wanted to believe him. Instead, I opened a new account under an alias used only in test environments, a dummy profile embedded with a Canary fund. If anyone accessed it, the system would trigger a silent alert, straight to my encrypted dashboard. Weeks passed. Nothing. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe love was simply the art of giving someone else too much access. Then one Friday, at 11:02 p.m., my dashboard lit up. Unauthorized login. Same IP prefix. The same city Julian had mentioned on his client retreat itinerary. The same browser fingerprint. I didn't panic. I documented. Screenshots. Timestamp chains. API calls. Evidence doesn't lie when preserved in triplicate. I mirrored his phone logs through a family plan interface he never bothered to secure. He was texting travel agencies, luxury rental brokers, a jeweler in Dubai. Every message was a breadcrumb. Every emoji a confession. At work, I kept my face neutral, while Detective Ria Patel, an old colleague now working in financial crimes, reviewed my findings over coffee. "You understand?" she said. "This could escalate fast. If he moves funds across borders, we're in federal territory. I'm counting on it." I replied. The trap wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration, reclaiming truth from the noise. I transferred a small sum from the Canary account to a high-end watch retailer's sandbox platform, leaving behind metadata that mimicked a legitimate transaction. The money didn't matter. The trail did. Julian's curiosity would do the rest. By Tuesday, his social media bloomed with photos from an airport lounge, a flute of champagne, a caption about earning what you deserve. I almost admired the symmetry. He had no idea he was broadcasting his own indictment. That night, my phone buzzed. Transaction approved for $820. Crono Royale Singapore. The Canary sang. I called Patel. "He's live," I said. She exhaled softly. "Then let's build the cage." Julian texted me from Singapore the next day. "You'd love it here. Palm trees. Endless malls. The smell of money." I typed back, "Stay safe." He replied with a selfie wrist tilted just enough to show a glint of silver. The watch. I zoomed in. The serial number was half visible in the reflection of the hotel window. The following morning, I visited my neighbor Layla, a freelance designer, over tea. She flipped through her phone and paused. "Isn't this your husband?" she asked. showing me a tagged photo from a travel influencer's story. Julian again. Same pose. Same watch. Different caption. Success tastes better when shared. Layla squinted. Funny thing, though, the boutique's glass behind him, you can see the display label mirrored. That's Chrono Royale. I designed their signage last quarter. Could you zoom in? I asked. There it was, the same serial, reversed but unmistakable. The metadata on the influencer's post confirmed the timestamp 20 minutes after the Canary purchase. Evidence multiplies when arrogance meets technology. When Julian returned home 2 weeks later, he carried gifts, silk scarves, designer shoes, a smug serenity that reeked of immunity. He wrapped his arms around me, whispering, "You've been quiet lately." "I've been working," I said. He laughed. "You always are. That's why I can do the dreaming for both of us." I smiled, recording every word on a discreet voice memo app. Over dinner, he bragged about deals that didn't exist, clients that never signed. I asked if he bought anything nice for himself. He lifted his wrist, the watch gleamed. Limited edition. He said, "Investment piece. Must have cost a fortune." I murmured, "Money well spent." He said, the recording captured it all, his tone. The brand. The implied ownership. That night, I sent the file to Patel. We have him on record admitting purchase linked to stolen funds. I wrote, "Next step, freeze the account. Let him make one last withdrawal." She replied, "The moment he touches it, we move." So I waited, watching the graph of digital noise trace the shape of my husband's downfall. Every login, every transfer, every heartbeat in binary. At 2:47 a.m., the alert came: attempted withdrawal 6. $0. ATM near airport. By 3:05. Patel texted, "We have visual. Proceeding." I turned off my monitor and stared at the dark reflection on the screen, half my face, half static. It felt like morning and rebirth sharing the same breath. The phone rang at 4. 1, 2. Patel's voice was calm. "He's in custody." Fraud. Identity theft. Attempted wire transfer. I closed my eyes. Was he surprised, shocked? She said. He kept saying, "She wouldn't do this to me." Neither would I, not the woman he imagined. Anyway, when I opened the curtains that morning, the city outside looked sharper than usual, like the air itself knew a secret. Julian's arrest hadn't hit the news yet, but the algorithm was stirring. Search patterns spike before headlines do. I could feel it in the data feeds I still monitored out of habit. Somewhere, an airport CCTV had logged his face, somewhere else. A customs officer had filed an incident report. Information travels faster than guilt can catch up. Detective Patel met me at a cafe 2 blocks from my apartment. She arrived with 2 paper cups, one labeled with my name in handwriting that looked too gentle for what she did. "He's talking," she said. "Mostly nonsense. But he's talking." What kind of nonsense? The kind that starts with, "You don't understand," and ends with, "She forced me." I stirred my coffee even though I never add sugar. "He'll make it sound romantic." I said, "That's his talent." Patel smiled faintly. "We prefer documentary footage." She opened her tablet, showing me the photos taken during his booking, the silver watch, the receipts, the passport, the cash. Everything ties back to your dummy account. Beautiful work. I almost feel bad for him. "Don't," I said. He gambled on ignorance. Over the next week, my apartment became an evidence lab. Every surface sprouted folders, drives, and printouts of transaction logs. I had to build the timeline perfectly, not for vengeance, but for closure. Dates, transfers, amounts, travel bookings, luxury purchases. I highlighted every point that aligned with my canary triggers. The pattern looked clinical. Inevitable. Each act of theft nested inside another act of vanity. At night, I'd open my laptop and replay his messages in chronological order. Love you. Babe. Need your card for a hotel deposit. They said they'll refund it next week. The lies weren't even creative, just consistent. I realized consistency is what fools you. You start mistaking predictability for trust. One evening, Layla stopped by with dinner and the same quiet sympathy people bring to funerals. You don't have to relive every detail, she said. Let them handle it. I'm not reliving. I answered. I'm documenting. It's different. She looked at the watch photo pinned on my corkboard. What happens after he's charged, I rebuild. And before that, I finish this. I said, tapping the folder marked Final Timeline. By the second week, Julian Slavier contacted me. My client wishes to make amends. The email said, he proposes an informal conversation. I forwarded it to Patel. She called within minutes. Don't meet him alone, she said. If he wants to talk, he can do it in the presence of counsel. I know, I said, though a small part of me wanted to see his face not for love, but to measure what remorse looks like when cornered. They scheduled a deposition instead. I sat across from him in a beige conference room where the air smelled like toner and fatigue. He looked smaller, like a balloon 2 days after the party. The first words out of his mouth weren't apologies. You set me up. No, I said quietly. You set yourself up. I just installed mirrors. He blinked, maybe expecting anger. You're cruel, he said. I'm precise. The stenographer didn't look up. Her fingers clattered steadily. Punctuation for our ghosts. When Patel slid the evidence packet across the table, Julian tried not to look. She narrated instead, calm, clinical. These are transaction records matching your fingerprint ID. This is the surveillance footage from the boutique. This is your voice recording describing the watch purchase. He rubbed his temples. I thought you'd never check. That sentence, of all the things he said, hurt the most, not the betrayal, but the assumption that I would choose comfort over truth. The following weekend, I drove to the coast to clear my head. I brought no laptop, no drives, no evidence, just air. The sea was rough, wind clawing at the sand. I stood there until my hair stuck to my face and thought about how quiet justice can be. It doesn't roar, it erodes. My phone buzzed. Patel again. He's agreed to a plea, she said. Restitution and probation. He'll have to repay what he stole. That won't fix everything. I said. No, she replied, but it fixes the ledger. When the call ended, I walked along the shoreline, counting the seconds between waves. Each crash sounded like punctuation, as if the world was rewriting itself. Back home, I found a package at my door, no return address. Just my name in handwriting. I recognized. Inside was a letter, and the watch, the same one from Singapore. Its shine dulled by scratches. His note read, maybe this can remind you I was real once. I'm sorry. I placed it on the table. The watch ticked faintly. Counting time I no longer owed him. Then, without ceremony, I sealed it in an evidence bag and labeled it, returned item, closed. Layla stopped by that night and saw it. You kept it. Just long enough to finish the story. I said. 2 months later, Patel visited to hand me the official closure report. You did everything right, she said. I did everything I had to. I corrected. She hesitated before leaving. You know, not everyone could stay that composed. I wasn't composed. I said. I was focused. After she left, I sat by the window, the city flickering like circuitry, every light, a testimony that systems, when designed properly, self-correct. I opened my personal log and wrote the final entry: case complete. Subject detained. Integrity restored. But I didn't close the file immediately. I let the screen glow for a while, watching the cursor blink like a heartbeat. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like silence finally had somewhere to rest. The trial didn't begin in a courtroom. It began in my inbox. A flood of messages arrived the moment the case file became public record. Journalists, bloggers, even strangers who claimed to relate. Everyone wanted a soundbite. A quote. A confession about how it felt to outsmart your husband. They wanted the cinematic version. But revenge isn't cinematic. It's administrative. It's endless forms. Digital signatures. And waiting rooms that smell like old carpet. Patel warned me to stay quiet. Anything you say can be spun. She said. I'm not saying anything. I replied. But silence has its own kind of gravity. It pulls speculation toward it. I moved into a smaller apartment near the river. The kind where walls hum at night, with pipes and echoes. The first evening there, I sat on the floor surrounded by unopened boxes. The air smelled like new paint and old memories. I told myself I'd left him behind. But trauma doesn't understand addresses. A week later, Patel called again. He's attempting an appeal. She said. On what grounds? Emotional coercion. He claims you manipulated him into confessing. I almost laughed. So I'm the villain now. In his story. Yes, she said. That's common. The call ended. But her words lingered. Every story shifts depending on who tells it. For months, I'd controlled the narrative. Now he wanted to rewrite it. That night I scrolled through social media and found a post on a men's forum. Someone had shared Julian's mugshot with the caption, "Victim of a vengeful wife." The comments multiplied like rot. She ruined his life. Modern women weaponize technology. Maybe he just made a mistake. It was strange. Watching strangers defend a man they didn't know. But maybe that's what he'd always counted on, the benefit of the doubt. I closed the laptop and opened my evidence folder again. Facts were my language. Proof was my punctuation. I wasn't afraid of his story. I was afraid of how easily people rewrite truth when the lie flatters them. The next morning, I walked to the courthouse. Patel met me at the steps. Coat collar up against the wind. You ready? She asked. I've been ready for months. Inside, the hearing room felt smaller than I expected. The judge was deliberate. Eyes heavy with patience. Julian sat across the aisle, wearing a gray suit that fit too perfectly. He didn't look at me. When the clerk swore us in, his voice barely trembled. His lawyer spoke first long sentences about love, misunderstanding, financial stress, a crafted performance of regret. When it was my turn, Patel slid a tablet across the table. I opened the folder marked Audio Exhibit B. Julian's voice filled the room. Money well spent. The phrase hung in the air like a curse. Even the stenographer paused for half a heartbeat. I didn't look at him. I simply said, "That's what he told me when he showed me the watch bought with my name." The judge nodded once. Expression unreadable. Motion denied. She said, "The prior confession stands." The gavel's echo felt like an ending. But endings, I've learned, rarely announce themselves. After the hearing, Patel and I walked outside into brittle sunlight. You know, she said, most people break long before this point. I did break, I said, just quietly. I went home and unpacked the last box, the one I'd avoided. Inside were wedding photos. A few cards. The remnants of a life I once narrated in plural pronouns. I flipped through them slowly, scanning for the exact moment. The smiles turned rehearsed. Then I stopped at one picture, the two of us on our anniversary. His hand on mine. Both wearing the same watch brand we'd bought years before. I remembered how he'd told me then. Time will always favor us. Maybe it did. Just not in the way he thought. I placed the photo face down and exhaled. Days passed. Work resumed. My colleagues tiptoed around me like I was made of glass. But I was past fragility. I was data hardened into steel. I led an audit case for a global bank, tracing embezzlement through shell companies. During one late-night review, my screen flickered a minor glitch, and for an absurd moment, I expected to see Julian's name pop up again. It didn't. Just another fraudster. Another set of lies to dismantle. Layla visited that weekend. She dropped off a plant, something green and stubborn that thrived on neglect. "You're healing," she said. I smirked. "Or upgrading." We sat on the balcony, watching the river slide beneath streetlights. "Do you ever think you'll trust again?" she asked. "Eventually," I said. "But next time, I'll read the fine print before the vows." She laughed. But I meant it. Months later, an envelope arrived from an unfamiliar return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an apology written in careful cursive. "I see now what I became. I'm sorry. Jay." No excuses. No manipulation. Just ink and admission. I didn't feel triumph. I felt balance. I folded the letter, slid it into my case file, and labeled it Evidence, Closure. That night, I wrote my final note for Patel's report. Case integrity remains intact. Emotional residue contained. Subject's remorse recorded. Outcome satisfactory. Before closing the document, I added one last line for myself. Sometimes justice doesn't heal you. It just stops the bleeding. Then I hit save. 6 months after the verdict, I woke to the sound of rain tapping against my window like cautious fingertips. The city outside had softened less accusation. More distance. Time doesn't heal. It just rearranges what hurts. Julian's probation was nearly over. He lived 3 districts away, under restrictions that forbade contact. I hadn't seen him since the final hearing. Still, sometimes I caught a glimpse of him in strangers, a familiar tilt of the chin, a voice too smooth, a laugh that didn't quite reach the eyes. That's what betrayal does. It burns its outline into your perception. I spent most mornings consulting for clients who trusted me with their digital messes tracing embezzlement, decoding fraud, helping them recover what they'd lost. It felt poetic. Every password I cracked, every hidden transfer I exposed, was a small defiance of what he once took from me. Justice had become my day job and my coping mechanism. One Friday afternoon, Patel stopped by unannounced. She looked different without her badge civilian. Almost tender. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, holding a bag of takeout, "and I needed to see the person who wrote the best evidence file I've ever read." I laughed. "You're easy to flatter." We ate on the floor, noodles steaming in their boxes, the city humming below. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "What, catching him?" "No," she said. "Knowing him?" I thought about that. About the years before the lies. Before the bank alerts and silent alarms. Regret isn't the right word. I said, "You only regret accidents." He wasn't an accident. He was a lesson with a pulse. Patel nodded slowly. "That's colder than most people admit." "It's survival," I said. Later that night, after she left, I sat at my desk and opened the folder titled Evidence, Closed. The file stared back photos, logs, recordings. The final letter. I hadn't touched them in months. I scrolled to the last page of my notes, case complete. Emotional residue contained. Not erased. A new email notification blinked on my screen. Subject restitution transfer confirmed. The bank statement showed the last repayment from Julian's account, the balance settled to 0. For a long time, I just stared at it. 0. Absence. But clean. I printed the confirmation, slipped it into the folder, and sealed it with tape. Then I took the folder to my building's basement, where the storage lockers smelled faintly of dust and regret. I placed it inside a box labeled Archive and shut the door. When I came back upstairs, rain had stopped. The city glowed like polished glass, For the first time in months, I felt the smallest pulse of something like peace. The following morning, Layla texted me. "There's an exhibit at the museum, The Anatomy of Deception. Sound familiar?" I smiled. "Let's go." The gallery was full of installations about truth and illusion mirrors. Light tricks. Fragments of text projected onto walls. One piece stopped me cold, a looping video of an hourglass that never emptied. Its sand recycled through invisible tubing. The placard read, "Control is an illusion disguised as order." Layla nudged me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, just recognizing an old habit. She tilted her head. "You've changed." "I've calibrated," I said, and meant it. That night, I stood on my balcony, the city lights reflecting off the river. Somewhere below, a couple argued, the rhythm of love eroding into static. I wondered if betrayal always sounds the same from the outside. I took a deep breath and began writing, not a case file, not an affidavit, but something different. A personal record. Maybe. The story behind the evidence. I used to think justice was the end of pain. It's not. It's the framework that keeps it from spreading. Healing isn't clean. It's messy. Non-linear. And sometimes cruel. But it's mine now. Every scar. Every document. Every byte of data is proof that I survived being rewritten. I paused. Reread the line. And added one more sentence. And if anyone tries to rewrite me again, I know exactly where to find the proof. I saved the file under a new name, Maya, restored. DocX. Then I turned off the monitor. Weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I received a message from Patel. Promotion came through. Heading the Financial Crimes Division now. Thought you should know you inspired the proposal for an ethics program. I replied, "Congratulations. The city's safer with you in charge." She wrote back, "You're part of the reason it's safer at all." I set the phone down and let the quiet fill the room. Outside, sunlight stretched across the skyline, like an unbroken line. When people ask what justice feels like, I tell them it's not fireworks or applause. It's paperwork filed properly, evidence stored, peace arriving without ceremony. And when they ask if I still believe in love, I say yes, just not the kind that hides behind passwords. So if you've ever loved someone who betrayed you, remember this: you can rebuild everything they burned. And when you're done, the ash will tell its own story. And if you ever forget, replay the sound of rain. It's the closest thing to forgiveness I've ever heard. Like this story, subscribe for more true-to-life tales of justice, betrayal, and redemption. Share your thoughts below your story. Might save someone else's. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.